Hey, good evening. My name is Pastor Dusty. Welcome to the Overcome Online Conference. We're really excited. It's Friday night to hear from Pastor Ben Last. He is the lead pastor of Southgate Church in Kemptville, Ontario, multi-campus church thriving in the greater Ottawa area. We're excited to have him share tonight. Just so you know, you are welcome to, as the conference goes on through the weekend, if you have a prayer request, a comment, a concern, make sure you send that to us, 613-378-2953 or myparkwaychurch@gmail.com. We'd love to get back to you, respond to those as we can, and be part of that as well. The lineup is a little bit changed this weekend. I know if you've registered online on the poster, Pastor Ben will be speaking tonight. Tomorrow night, on Saturday night, I'll be interviewing Russ Smith. He was the lead singer of the iconic Canadian Christian band Hocus Pick, and I'll be interviewing him tomorrow night on issues connected to worship and church moving forward through COVID, things like that, talking to him about his time with Hocus Pick as well. And then on Sunday morning, I will be giving the morning message. If you're tuning in to be part of that, I know if you're part of Parkway regularly, Sunday morning as usual, but if you're just kind of part of the conference, I'll be sharing on the Sunday morning in place of the other speaker. Glad to have you here tonight. Grab your Bible, grab a coffee. I hope this is a meaningful time for you tonight with your household, and God bless you. Welcome to conference, and make sure you register. I know some of you tuning in, we're giving away some great prizes through the weekend. So register online, myparkwaychurch.ca. Click on news and events. Easy to register, take you under a minute, and we'll put your name in for a special draw through the weekend. God bless you.
Let's jump into the encouragement that God has for us, the hope that God has for us, and we're going to deal with, I think maybe is a problem that a lot of us are facing, but what I need you to do right off the bat is go and grab a piece of paper and a pencil or a pen, or you can use a phone, all right? I'm going to take just take a few seconds here, go and grab that and come right back, all right? I'm watching you, go and get it, all right? Go and get it. All right, and so we're going to tackle this together, and we are going to camp out at the beginning here in 2 Corinthians chapter 10. And so you can turn there in your phone, in your Bible, whatever you got. We're going to have it up on the screen, but we invite you to jump in here, come along, and study God's Word and find some hope in this situation. Now, listen, one of my most favorite things to do, if I'm honest, is sleep. All right, so I'm in a stage of my life where I don't get a lot of sleep. We have 3 boys, and they are, sometimes up in the night. The youngest one in particular is up a lot, all right? I am an early riser, and so there's just times where I don't get a lot of sleep, and I really enjoy sleep. Now, I'm going to make some statements that aren't probably theologically accurate. They're not in the Bible, but sleep in my mind is kind of like death, all right? And so you have bad dreams, you got nightmares that are like hell, right? And then you have really good dreams that you wish you could just stay in, right? Because it's like heaven. And then every morning you wake up and it's like resurrection. Every time you wake up and you start brand new. And so that's, you're not going to find that in the Bible, but that's just kind of something that kind of brews in my head. And whenever you sleep, you have something called the REM cycle, the rapid eye movement, all right? And this is where your eyes are kind of going back and forth really quickly as your eyelids are shut. Now, this happens, it happens before you wake up, right before you wake up, and as soon as you fall asleep, okay? This is the time that you're dreaming, and you have very vivid dreams in the REM cycle, okay? Now, during the REM cycle, It's sometimes so real and so accurate. You have these moments. I don't know if you've been there, but I have these moments in my life as I'm kind of in that cycle or as I'm waking up. I feel like I'm awake and I sense kind of like someone's in the room. You ever had that feeling? And you wake up and it's kind of like terrifying, right? And you're like, I think someone's in here, but you're paralyzed. You can't move. And so you think someone's there and you want to turn your head to look at them, but you can't turn your head because in REM cycle, you're actually paralyzed. You can't move around. You're not going to be moving around all over the place because God designed you that way not to move around or else it would be dangerous. In fact, there's medical conditions where people can move around during REM cycle and people get really seriously hurt because you're not supposed to really be moving around during REM cycle, right? And so you're sitting there, you're laying there, you can't move, you feel like someone's in the room because your mind is dreaming that way, but there's no one actually in there. and you're freaked out because you're paralyzed, and that's when you start waking up and you're like, "Whoa," right? Like you're making some weird noise. And if you have a spouse, you're kind of scaring them half to death because they're wondering what's going on. And so it's this weird situation where your mind is telling you one thing, but your body is telling you, no, we're not going to react to this. We're not going to move, right? Your mind is saying yes, but your body is saying no. You ever experienced that? You ever experienced that before? For me, that it happens every so often, and it's freaky. Now, wouldn't it be great if we could do the same thing with our damaging thoughts? I mean, our thought patterns. Especially in times like this, the way that we think, the things that we think about, the way our mind goes in seasons like this, in crisis moments, wouldn't it be just an amazing thing if we could just kind of master over these thoughts? These damaging, these terrible, worried, stress, anxiety-filled, negative kind of thoughts in our mind. Wouldn't that be great? I mean, if we're honest, we don't know what this crisis is going to bring in our lives. If we're honest, we don't know if we're going to lose our jobs. We don't know if we're going to lose our homes. We don't know if the economy is going to recover. We don't know if we're going to contract this disease, this virus, right? We don't know if we're going to die from this virus. We don't know these things, and our mind is filled with these destructive thoughts in our brain that we don't really know what to deal with and how to deal with them. And they kind of control the way that we think and how we respond and how we react. And it appears the entire world is crashing down before us. And in the midst of these, it's so easy to let these damaging thoughts control our lives. And so today I want to show you how you can have a breakthrough with some of those damaging thoughts. How you can have a breakthrough in the way that you think and how you proceed and how we go about these next several weeks of our lives as we're kind of on pause in some ways in our society. And how we can kind of move forward out of the REM paralysis, if you will, of our anxiety and our stress and our worry. And so, we're going to take a look at 2 Corinthians chapter 10, drawing your attention to verse 4 to 6 at the beginning here, and we'll check this out up on the screen. It says this: "The weapons we fight with are not the weapons of the world. On the contrary, they have divine power to demolish strongholds." And so strongholds are incorrect thought patterns for today, all right? That's kind of what we're talking about. They're incorrect thought patterns. They're not patterns that are accurate necessarily. They're strongholds in our minds, the thing we allow into our lives. And some of you have a real problem with destructive thoughts, with negative thoughts. You are a Debbie Downer whenever we talk to you or whenever someone talks to you about the state of what's happening and the way the world's working and Canada and the government. I mean, it's just nonstop negativity that comes out of you. You really struggle with this. You kind of relate with this right here, okay? Let's go to the next verse 5. "We demolish arguments and every pretension that sets itself up against the knowledge of God, and we take captive every thought to make it obedient to Christ." Now, when I am in that REM paralysis, right, and I'm kind of in the middle of this and I'm dreaming, I want to turn my head, but my body says no. And it took that thought, right? The body said no, and God has given us weapons against that. God has given us the abilities to stand up against that, against our thoughts that are opposite to the knowledge of God. He's given us weapons to kind of help us realign ourselves in the way that we think, the way that we deal with things, the way that we react in crisis situation. See, God says that He loves you, but your thoughts might say, no, He doesn't. God says He's going to look after you in His words, but my thought says, no, He's not. I'm going to worry about this. God says He's going to give you strength and hope, but my thought pattern says, no, He's not. And so he gives us weapons to kind of fight against those thoughts, those strongholds. And he says he's going to deal with this, and he wants us to have a breakthrough and demolish those negative, kind of terrorizing, terrible, chaotic thoughts, right? And let's go to verse 6. It says this, "And we will be ready to punish every act of disobedience once your obedience is complete." So my family, we like to go to a place called Clip and Climb. You ever heard of this? You ever heard of this? It's a pretty unique place. We got a picture of it up here. It is it's a climbing gym, all right? But it's unique in several ways. It's over in Gatineau, and now they've expanded all over Canada. But this particular gym is really unique because it's actually in an old Catholic church. They've remodeled the entire church, and now it's a climbing gym. They have the regular climbing gym, and then they have Clip and Climb. And Clip and Climb looks a lot like this, all right? There's normal climbing walls, and there's a speed meter, and you get to the top, and you can kind of race against yourself or other people. But there's also other types of climbing apparatus here that doesn't. It's not like a normal, typical climbing gym. And so over here, you have what kind of look like Lego blocks here. Other places, you have like trailer hitches, like little hitch and balls that you can climb to the ceiling, all kinds of different things. Now, these are called holds, all right? They're little outcrops that you can hold onto with your hands and your feet to bring you up, right? It's amazing to me how these little pieces of plastic can support my entire weight and help me to kind of keep going up, right? It's amazing to me. Now, I want you to think about that, these strongholds, these holds here that are kind of locked in that can support a grade. These are called strongholds. And I want you to think about that because the devil puts strongholds in your mind, in the way that you think. And you know what? He gets one of those and he climbs, and these are all through your brains. And the more strongholds he has, the better areas of his life, of your life, that he's able to penetrate. And he wants to take those holds, strongholds after strongholds, and climb all through your mind and damage the way that you think and the way that you react in crisis moments like we are in now. And so we're going to learn how to battle these. Just a step-by-step process, super simple, but it might be very beneficial, okay? And so let's just do this together. What I want you to do, you can grab that pen and or pencil and paper or your phone. I'm going to get you to write several things down, okay? Several things. I just want you to do this. Just humor me. Follow along together. It might be really helpful, right? And so here's the first thing I want you to do. I want you to write down the damaging thought that you have. Go ahead and write it down. So what is that damaging thought? What is it? Is it, I think I'm going to lose my home at the end of this. I think that I'm going to get COVID-19. I think that my family's going to be sick. I feel like I'm going to lose my job. I think my family's going to starve. I'm going to lose my house. Well, whatever it is, you write that thing down. Whatever it is that's kind of consuming your thought life, it could be several things, all right? Write those things down and scribble it out, whatever it is, on a piece of paper or on your phone. And I want to point your attention to John chapter 3, verses 20 to 21. Here's what it says. "Everyone who does evil hates the light and will not come into the light for fear that their deeds will be exposed. But whoever lives by the truth comes into the light so that it may be seen plainly that what they have done has been made done in the sight of God." This is really important because the devil wants you to keep doing things, and he will whisper into your thoughts. He will whisper into your head. He wants you to be isolated. He wants you to be quarantined, if you will, in your mind, right? He wants these things to be by yourself in the quietness of your head. He will whisper destructive thoughts to you in hopes that it'll have a stronghold in your mind. That's what he wants to do. And when you write this thing down, what you're doing is you're bringing it into the light. You're taking it out of the darkness of your mind, in a sense, and you're putting it into light. You're showing exactly what it is. And when you do that, oftentimes what you will discover is how ridiculous the thing that you're thinking actually is. It comes into the light. You start seeing for what it is. It becomes absolutely ridiculous. And so what you're going to do is you're going to say, God, shine some light on this thing. Shine some reality on this thing. Shine your truth onto this thing that I'm writing down. Show me, expose exactly what this thing is. Just take a few seconds. Take a few seconds, write it down, and then we'll go from there. All right, you got it? Have you written it down? All right, you wrote it down. Okay, let's go to the second thing. Now, the question I want you to answer is, after this damaging thought, is what I wrote down true? Is what I wrote down. So I'm going to lose my job. Is that true? I'm going to lose my house. Is that true? I'm going to get sick of COVID-19. Is that true? My family's going to starve. Is that true? Well, normally, if you're writing it down, you actually believe it's true, or you wouldn't wrote it down, right? And so probably you can write down beside that, you could probably write down yes, if you're honest with yourself. You believe it to be true, or else you wouldn't have wrote it down. So you can write down, yeah, I think it's true. I think that it feels true. And I want to point your attention now to John chapter 8, verse 31 and 32. Here's what it says. Jesus said, if you hold to my teaching, you are really my disciples. Then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. And sometimes I think we can be discouraged based on lies, things that aren't true, things that we believe, these strongholds in our mind. And a lot of what we worry about is a lie. In fact, many of you could say that you have worried for months, if not years, about things in your life in the past. You worried about something that never actually took place. Would you be honest about that? You've believed and you've stressed and you've had anxiety and you've worried about something that never actually happened. Some of you've worried, you've stressed, you've had anxiety about things, you've worried about it, you've stayed up all night thinking about things that actually did happen, but it turned out that it was better than you actually thought, right? If you're honest, am I true? And some of you've worried and you've stressed out and you've had anxiety about things that you've worried about for so long, and it actually came true and it took place, and you're kind of glad it did take place. For instance, right? Your boyfriend, your girlfriend, they dump you, right? And at the time, you're like, oh my goodness, I've worried so much about that. I'm being so stressed about that, whatever it is. And then like a couple months pass, and you're like, oh my goodness, I'm so glad that I got rid of that person, right? I'm so glad that they're not in my life anymore because it was toxic, it was whatever, right? And you had anxiety about it, but then it happened, and you were actually glad it took place. And so let me bring you to the next question. The thing that you wrote down, are you 100% sure that it's true? Are you 100% sure that you're going to lose your job? Are you 100% sure that you're going to lose your house? Are you 100% sure that you're going to have COVID-19? Are you 100% sure that your family is going to starve because there's not going to be enough toilet paper? Are you 100% sure of these things? The answer is no. You cannot be 100% sure that these things are going to take place. You cannot be 100% sure that what you wrote down, the thing that you're feeling, the thing that you're worried about, the thing that you're stressed about, you're not 100% sure that it's actually going to happen. That's the truth of the matter, right? Am I right? That is the truth of the matter. And so let's go to this next question. How does your damaging thought make you feel? How does thinking about losing your house, how does that make you feel? How does losing your job, how is it making you feel right now? Your family is starving, getting COVID. I mean, how do these things make you feel? Well, I think we could write down things like fearful, anxious. We could write things down like stressed out, nervous. I'm going to lose my house. It doesn't make me feel good. That I think I'm going to get COVID. I'm over 65 and I'm worried about my life. It doesn't make me feel good. I mean, that's the reality of it. That damaging thoughts, it doesn't make you feel good. You don't feel good about it. And so do I think it's going to happen? I think so, but I'm not 100% certain. I think it's going to happen, but I'm not 100% sure, and it makes me feel nervous and anxious and fearful, and so everything that you do is based on those emotions of how it makes you feel. And so you're on Facebook, and the things that you're writing are just like based on anxiety, fear, stressed out, worry. You're right, you're reacting out of that. You're living your life in how you interact with your family or your spouse or your friends or when you're on FaceTime or Zoom or whatever you're using, right? You're reacting, you're projecting this because this is how you're feeling. You're living that out in the everyday and being fearful. Listen, being fearful is a condition of the heart. It's totally different than being careful. Careful is a condition of the mind. It's important that we are careful. It's not important being fearful. Fear comes from the heart, right? Being careful comes from the brain. They're two separate things. And so we are just, I think, we're a few weeks away from spring, right? I mean, we are very close to spring here. Soon, we're going to get leaves back on the tree, and soon people will be planting their gardens, and soon the sun will, the days get longer here, and it's just, there's hope-filled. I love spring because of that, right? Things just start to blossom and bloom, and trees begin to produce fruit. And here's the thing, though. In the middle of the winter, I'm no tree expert, but I really have a hard time telling what is what kind of tree. I can tell from certain kind of trees, but I don't know a lot of the trees. I can't really tell the difference until there's like leaves on them or until they bear fruit. I can't really tell the difference between trees until they bear fruit, because the fruit really shows you what kind of tree that is. And let me tell you, it's the same with your thoughts. It's the same with your thoughts. It tells you where they come from. It tells you if it's from God, and it tells you if it's from the devil based on the fruit of your thought. If your thoughts make you feel fearful, they're not from God. If they make you feel anxious, they're not from God. If they make you feel worried, they're not from God, right? In fact, I would turn to Galatians chapter 5, verse 19, starting at verse 19. It says this: "The acts of the flesh are obvious: sexual immorality, impurity, debauchery, idolatry, and witchcraft, hatred, discord, jealousy, fits of rage, selfish ambition, dissensions, factions, and envy, drunkenness, orgies, and the like." I underlined "and the like" because it's kind of like this list isn't over. There's a lot more things we could shove in here. I'm just capping it off with "and the like," all right? There's a whole bunch of other things that we could kind of pile into here that are not from God. These do not come from God. These are negative, destructive kind of thought patterns that we have in our life that leads to bad things. These things lead you to be stressed out. In times like this, God doesn't want you to be stressed out. He wants you to trust in what He said He's going to do. He wants you to trust in who He is and how He's made you and His plan and His purpose. He wants you to trust that He's a loving Father and He's a good dad and that He wants to take care of His kids. In times like this, that's what He wants you to do, not be worried and stressed out, right? If we contrast this to Galatians chapter 5, verse 22, it's a different scene, right? Because whenever you see in the Bible that a metaphor is used to not act like an animal, whenever we hear animals used in the Bible, it usually means like, don't be an animal, okay? It's a bad thing. You are a human being. You're designed as a human being. There is a difference between humanity and animals, and don't act like an animal, especially cats. Got it? And so that's in the Bible. The next thing that you'll find in the Bible is when a metaphor is used in kind of like manufacturing, all right? So being refined by the fire, for example. It makes kind of this understanding that who you are will eventually be revealed, okay? I think we are in the moment of great refining of the church, the Big C church worldwide. This will test the waters of the church worldwide, right? And so it kind of tests for who you are and who God has made you to be and where you stand. It's the great refining. So manufacturing, whenever those metaphors are used, that's kind of what it's saying. But whenever plants are used in the Bible as a metaphor, this is kind of symbolic of who we are supposed to be. Kind of a projection of where I want to get to is who God has made us to be and where we need to go, okay? And so with that in mind, let's read Galatians 5:22 and 23. It reads like this: "But the fruit of the Spirit," there's that fruit, right? The fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, forbearance, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Against such things there is no law. What does that mean? What does that mean, no law? It means you can't be arrested for being loving or joyful or having peace or forbearance or kindness or goodness. You can't be arrested for these things. But if you went back to Galatians 5:19, you can be arrested for some of those things, right? There is law on some of those things. You can't just go out and have fits of rage in a public place. You can't do those things. In fact, the other things, if we contrast the list, the other things you can be arrested for, these you have to willingly submit to. You have to willingly give them up. You cannot be arrested for them. Let's jump to this next question, which is, if you didn't have that thought, how would you feel? If you knew you weren't going to lose your house, if you knew you weren't going to lose your job, if you knew your family wouldn't starve, if you knew that the world wasn't going to come crashing down, if the economy was going to be fine, how would you feel then? Write it down. Maybe you would feel, I don't know, you would feel powerful. You would feel confident. You would feel peaceful. You would feel hopeful. You would feel courageous. You would feel full of faith. Listen, it's a condition of the heart here that we're talking about. You don't know what's going to happen. You have no idea how the next few weeks are going to play out. You don't know how the next 6 months are going to play out. You don't know how the next 6 years are going to play out, right? You have no idea how this is going to work out. Even if you do lose your house 6 weeks or 6 months from now, do you want to spend those 6 weeks or 6 months like being all stressed and worried and full of anxiety? You don't have control over it anyways. Or would you rather trust in God and be happy and be peaceful and content and courageous and love others and exhibit some of these fruits of the Spirit that we highlighted? Which way would you rather live those 6 weeks to 6 months? Right? I think the answer is clear. There's no point in worrying about this. In fact, Romans 1:17 says this. It says this, For in the gospel, the righteousness of God is revealed, a righteousness that is by faith from first to last. Just as it is written, the righteous will live by faith. By faith. It's so vital. By faith, I'm going to take that thought, that destructive thought, and I'm going to have a breakthrough in it. By faith, I'm going to take that and I'm going to claim the Word of God. By faith, I know that God will look after me no matter what. By faith, I am not going to live in fear. I'm going to live in strength and peace and confidence. By faith, I'm going to live in those things because I know who God has called me to be. And I'm not going to live in fear of the unknown. I'm going to live by who God says He is and what His Word says, right? And so I'm going to declare the opposite of the thoughts that I'm feeling. I'm going to declare the exact opposite of my fear and my anxiety and my worry of whatever thought I wrote down. What if I wrote down the exact opposite? In fact, that's the next question. Why don't you describe the opposite? Why don't you just do that? Just for fun, right? I'm going to lose my house. What is the opposite of going to lose your house? Why don't you write that down? I'm not going to lose my house. In fact, I'm going to clean my house. I'm not going to lose my house, or in fact, I'm going to buy a new house. Does that seem extreme to you? I'm not going to lose my house. I'm going to buy a new house. Let's just talk that through, right? As the economy is kind of getting lower and lower here, interest rates are way down, house prices are probably going to go lower and lower. So is it actually factual to talk that way? Maybe I'm going to buy a new house. Maybe I'm not going to lose it. Maybe I'm actually going to buy a new one. Don't you think that's just as drastic as thinking I'm going to lose my house? Isn't it just as drastic to say I'm going to buy a brand new house? And so I'm just pointing this out. Why don't you write down the opposite of the negative thought? Write that down. And is it possible that could happen? It is possible, right? It is possible. Declare what you feel is love and joy and peace and forbearance and kindness and goodness and faithfulness and gentleness and self-control. Declare those things, because that's who God made you to be, not to be full of worry and stress and anxiety and hoarding and all kinds of craziness that we see in our world. That's not who we are. It's just not. And so let's recap here. Let's recap kind of what we discussed and these things I want you to write down. Write down your damaging thought. Is what you wrote down true? Probably. You probably thought that way. Are you 100% sure that it's true? Well, no one can be 100% sure because it hasn't happened yet, right? How does your damaging thought make you feel? Do you feel good about it? Do you feel bad about it? Usually we feel stressed and worried about it. If you didn't have that thought, how would you feel? Probably the opposite, right? And so let's write down the opposite thought of the damaging thought. Let's write down the opposite of what we actually believe. Let's just do the exact opposite of that and write that down. All right? And so here's the deal. I wrote down some next steps, and I think for me they're very clear for you. And I think that there's been no greater opportunity for the church than in this moment. Yeah, it's different. Yeah, it's challenging. Yeah, we've had to switch the way that we do things. But I think there's more possibilities for more people than ever before to hear the hope of Jesus. And so here's my next step for you. If you're watching for the first time, maybe the second or third time, and church is new to you, here's what I want you to consider. I want you to consider to unite your life with Jesus. I live with the hope that there's more to life than the COVID-19 virus. I live with the hope that there's life after, even if I die or when I die, there's life after that. I live in a hope and a faith in looking at the long game rather than the short game, right? And so my invitation to you is, would you leave whatever you used to know behind you? And would you have a breakthrough in your life to who God is calling you to be? Listen, God has been chasing you so long. He's been following you for so long, and He wants to love you. He wants to look after you. He wants to care for you. He wants to mold and to shape you into that perfect person that He's made you to be. He's made you with purpose. But He's standing there with open arms, and you just got to turn to Him. That's it. And say, I want freedom from my past, and I want forgiveness from my past, and I want to turn it over to you, and I want to embrace where you're heading and where you're leading me to. I need hope in the midst of a crisis. And my invitation is can you take that step from who you used to be to who God wants you to be, right? And embrace Jesus. And understand how much God loves you and how much He cares for you in times like this. That's my first. And if you want to take that step, I just invite you to write us, to send an email, to make a phone call, whatever you need to do. Let us know that you took that step, and we want to journey with you. Yeah, it might be different than normal. It might not be in person right off the bat here. It will be someday, right? This is not going to last forever. But maybe right for the here and now, would you let us know? Would you let us journey with you in cyberspace or on the phone or whatever we can do, right? The second thing I wrote down is this: trust God to work good out of this situation. Is it possible that this could be one of the most defining moments in the church? Is it possible that this could be one of the most defining moments in the movement of the gospel? Can you trust God to work good out of this situation? I think just let Him flip it, right? Let Him flip this thing on its end and let Him do something that we weren't expecting, that we weren't even prepared for, but we're willing to go. All right?